Gerald Chambers. Hey, I'm back at you. We need to talk about something. There's a big trial going on down in LA, and this came across on the Associated Press today. I saw it where Zuckerberg has been called to testify about whether or not social media is harming people, particularly children. And so there's a lot here that we need to talk about because it gets at some of the things that I've been trying to talk to you guys about, right? So like the defense attorneys are bringing up whether or not social media is addictive or not, whether it meets the clinical definition of addiction. So usually that's a high threshold. That's like, is compulsive use despite negative consequences. That's one thing. And then loss of control, tolerance, needing more over time, needing to use it more and more over time, withdrawal symptoms, significant impairment in functioning. Now, most social media doesn't meet that high criteria. Now, you guys in drug treatment, for the most part, you guys have met that criteria through using some of the substances that you use. But the thing that I want to point out is something can be addictive without meeting that criteria. It can still create harm without meeting the criteria that we're talking about here. Okay. And the other thing I want to make sure that you understand is that anything can be used as a numbing agent. It doesn't have to be a drug. It could be spending money. It could be gambling. It could be social media. It could be promiscuity, sex. It could be food. Anything can numb feelings. Anything can be used in that way. That's why it's really important to understand the disease of addiction as opposed to focusing on a single substance. Because you could stop smoking, for example, smoking cigarettes, and pick up gambling. You could stop using heroin and start drinking alcohol. So it could morph into a lot of different things. That's why it's so important to talk about this. That's why I'm always talking about it, because our country is going through a lot right now with social media, with gambling, which is being attached to sports, these platforms. And it's not that it's a grand conspiracy. It's not like there's a big dude that's manipulating everything. It's that our society has certain incentives that line up that make it possible for big pharma to profit, social media to profit, gambling industries to profit, alcohol and tobacco producers to profit. It's incentives. Okay. Now harm can occur through clinical low-level exposure, right? You could have chronic sleep deprivation as a result of being on social media. Well, I'm not going to say being on social media. I'm just saying chronic sleep deprivation is harmful. Okay, ultra-processed food consumption, that can harm you. It might not reach the criteria of addiction. Constant workplace stress, constant relationship stress, right? Environmental noise pollution. Those things can cause harm through chronic low-level exposure, right? And none of those require addiction to produce measurable effects. And similarly, social media can disrupt sleep cycles. It can increase social comparison. It can amplify anxiety, reduce sustained attention. It can encourage validation-seeking behavior. And these outcomes can occur without any kind of compulsive pathology. That's why they're dangerous. That's why you shouldn't let your kids have screens. You shouldn't let young children have screens. Even teenagers, they don't need screens. Get the screens out of their hands. Put a book in their hand. Now, the designs of these platforms have been incentivized to exploit vulnerabilities. That's how they get us to use them, right? Psychological vulnerabilities. Platforms are built around variable reward schedules. That's one of the strongest ways to get people to repeat a behavior. You know, like when you go to a gambling shack, you go to Reno or a Tahoe, you don't win every time. You win every so often. You know, it's variable. And that's what gets you to pull the handle again. That's what gets you to throw your money down and gamble. You know, variable reward schedules, right? That's the hardest thing to break. Social approval metrics like likes, shares, and views. You know, even when I make these videos, I feel some kind of way when people don't see them. And I'm not even making these for the algorithm. I'm making these for my clients and people that I talk to, right? But I feel some kind of way. When I only got 2 views, you see I only got a couple of followers, a couple of subscribers, you know. So, but I don't really feel like sticking my head in the microwave and nothing over it. I just laugh at it, right? But I do have some kind of feeling. Algorithmic application of emotionally charged content. You know, like once you start looking at some of this crazy stuff, the algorithm kind of learns your tendencies and it feeds you the stuff you're looking for, right? Like if you're looking for crazy Trump videos, it start giving you more Trump videos, right? Endless scroll interfaces. Now this is where I get caught up. You know, I'm scrolling all night, looking at another YouTube video, looking at another art video, yeah. Endless scrolling, right? You know, the systems kind of stimulate my dopamine systems, right? Reward systems, social comparison, right? I'm comparing my videos to other people and feeling some kind of way, right? Yeah. Threat detection systems, you know, like outrage, fear, you know, I'm scared of everything. Scared to go outside because I'm looking at these crazy videos of people doing crazy stuff, right? It can affect me. That can be harmful, right? Wait, I got to throw this one in. You know, you could be on social media so much, I could stop liking my wife. You know, stop loving black women. I got to go to Cuba to find me a woman or something. I'd be ready to trade my wife in. You cats be talking so hard about women. You know, your relationship destabilization as a result of being on social media and listening to some of these knuckleheads talking about relationships, right? Harm. By different ways it can be harmful. I just had to throw that one in there. It don't need to create clinical addiction to increase my compulsive checking where I look, you had to take me to the emergency room if I lose my phone. I'm compulsively checking to see if you guys looking at my videos, right? And I'm grown, right? Kids, they worse than that. They don't have the kind of controls that I'm supposed to have, right? Increase rumination. You know, that's when you running stuff in your head over and over again. Maybe you saw something on YouTube, or you thinking about YouTube, or thinking about something you saw. You know, intensify insecurity, right? Do I look good enough? Am I handsome enough? Are my videos good enough? Do you guys like these? Oh, you guys didn't give me a like, man. I'm insecure. Now my jaw's poked out because nobody liked my videos, right? Distorted self-image. Oh, I'm providing you with information that you can't get anywhere else. Oh, I'm the greatest of all time. With my platform and this information I'm giving, I'll shock the world. You know, that kind of stuff. Get inflated. You know, that's harm, right? Behavioral conditioning. Not necessarily addiction. Changing my behavior. Where I'm making videos rather than talking about the stuff that I think might be helpful. I'm just making videos to try to get likes, or I'm just making videos to try to impress somebody, right? Developmental vulnerability. What about that? Adolescents are particularly sensitive to peer evaluation, social exclusion, right? Identity formation. I don't even know who I am. I'm trying to look like everybody else or be like everybody else. Reward sensitivity. Do you like me or not? Even moderate exposure can be a problem. Increased body dissatisfaction. Am I too fat for this video? I don't like myself because I want to look like the people I see on NBC or ABC, right? Heightened depression symptoms, intensity, fear of missing out, FOMO. I got to be online to see what people doing. Alter my self-concept and formation. You talk about on young people, even adults though, right? Again, none of these things need to meet the addiction criteria, and they can still be harmful, right? Cultural harm without individual pathology, right? An entire population can experience collective harm without widespread clinical diagnosis. Social media can contribute to political polarization, right? Attention fragmentation. I can't even read a book. I'm skimming all the articles. I'm just skimming, right? I'm coming away with no deep understanding of anything. Reduce deep reading. Probably one of the best things you can do to beat dementia or keep your mind right is read something, right? It can also impair skills development. I'm trying to learn how to play the piano. If I just traded the time that I spend on social media for the time I'm practicing piano, I'd be able to play Monk. I'd be able to play some stuff. Mess with your identity construction. Like, who am I? Am I who I want to be, or am I who I want you to think I am? Right? I'm performing on here instead of just being my real self. I have a performative identity. Right? Functional impairment is not all or nothing. Clinical addiction requires significant impairment, but impairment exists on a spectrum. Right? A teen losing 1 hour of sleep nightly may not qualify as addicted, but over the years this may affect mood, cognition, and development. Go your ass to bed. Right? Don't be up late at night scrolling. That's what I'm doing. I'm talking to myself too, not just you. Right? A person checking their phone 80 times a day may not meet addiction criteria. That's a small amount of time. I check my phone probably more than 80 times a day. Right? I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to put myself on blast. Yeah. But attention fragmentation still impacts productivity and focus. Yeah. Having trouble focusing on something. That's why I need my meditation. So I can defrag my hard drive and get back to what I need to do. Now, also, I'm going to throw in something. Like you can also be distracted from your primary purpose. When I ask questions like, what's unmanageable in your life? What do you want to stop doing, start doing, and keep doing? Right? That's your North Star. If you don't know what those things are and you're being distracted from it, you are not free. Right? Because remember, freedom is making a plan and being able to follow through on it. So if the platforms are interfering with your ability to do that, you're not free and you're not going to be happy. And that might be the reason why you're turning to these substances as an escape from feeling dread, alienation, loneliness, dissatisfaction, all that stuff, right? Now, here's the strategic framing problem. If companies frame harm as dependent on clinical addiction, right, they shift the burden of proof to psychiatry. But public health harm does not require psychological classification. Yeah, you don't need to talk to me in order to determine if something is harmful or not. You should be able to determine that for yourself. Secondhand smoke was harmful before it was medically codified as a distinct psychiatric condition. If you waiting on psychologists, marriage and family therapists to tell you something is a problem, you may be waiting too late. Remember, if you got a lump, that lump has been growing for 10 years. By the time you notice it's a lump and you go to the doctor, it may be too late. So you don't want to give the institutions the responsibility for determining whether something is harmful to you or not, because it's the institutions themselves that may be creating the harm. You know, trust me, these products can be psychologically destabilizing without being medically addictive. They can still harm you. Yeah. And we don't even know what addiction is. That's why I keep talking about it. Because we're being faced with more and more things that can lead to addiction. That's why I'm trying to educate you about this. You may think just because I ain't drinking or just because I ain't shooting a spike in my arm, I'm not addicted. But we live in an addicted society. And it's not that anybody's intentionally trying to do it. Well, they might be. Some people might be trying to intentionally do it, but that's not necessary. It's just a series of incentives that line up that make addiction possible. Weak families, right? Poor education, poverty, stress, disinformation, a lack of democratic involvement. The institutions are weakened, right? And so this creates a situation where you're looking for an escape. You're looking to use something. That's why I'm talking to you about it. We're going to get overwhelmed. You see that they are linking gambling to sports now. And people are having trouble. Some people are going to be overwhelmed. There are vulnerable people in our society, and the institutions are not trying to protect you from it. But I am. I'm trying to talk to you about it. Is social media clinically addictive? The better question is, does it systematically exploit psychological vulnerabilities in ways that degrade well-being over time? Check. Harm can arise through attention capture, emotional amplification, social comparison, sleep disruption, identity distortion, algorithmic reinforcement of extremes. None of these require meeting the diagnostic threshold of addiction. In other words, addiction is not the only form of harm. And limiting the debate to addiction may obscure the broader cultural and psychological consequences. That's why I'm talking about it. That's why you're hearing that over here. Right? Come on, y'all. If you can see it, you can do something about it. If you can't see it, you can't do nothing about it. We're being lulled into addiction. Right? Why? Well, because it's easier. We can't even make a legitimate reparations claim because we on Facebook. We can't even get legitimate health care because we on TikTok. We on social media. We sedated. Right? It's not necessarily a conspiracy. It's just incentives to keep us distracted from what we need to be working on. You can't even get mental health services. You can't even really get treatment services for this because we distracted. We don't even know what fight we in. Right? We fighting each other, and we really ought to be talking about these institutions that we can't trust, that are not protecting our interests, that have figured out a way to lobby the government to create these incentives that allow them to profit off our misery. That's why I'm talking about it. Yeah. Look, don't take nothing. See if you can put your phone down for 24 hours. Right? Anything can be, look, something is addictive if it's mood altering, habit forming with negative consequences. Anything can be addictive. Anything can be used as a numbing agent. So if you're hearing that from me now, you can't act like you don't know. And if you need help with that, you need to holler at me. You need to put me on the squad, right? That's what I'm making these videos for. So share this with your family. When your kids start nagging you for a cell phone, put this video on and show them this and talk to them about it. You know, if you can't talk to your husband because he's looking at his phone, or you can't talk to your wife because she on her phone when you go out to dinner, y'all sitting there at a nice table and everybody on their phone and you not talking and engaging, yeah, put this video on and talk about that. So anyway, hey, go to Heart Connections and make a donation. Smash the damn like button. Share the video. Be promiscuous with the information. It's the only thing that's going to help us. Right? Till next time.